Hey, before this video starts, I just want to go over the prerequisites like I had to in my other video. You pretty much need to be familiar with the major scale, chords of a key, arpeggios, all 5 positions of the pentatonic scale, and all 7 positions of the major scale, also known as your modes. And, I didn't really think about I was making the video, but this is kind of like combining like a little bit of caged with maybe more traditional music theory and fretboard knowledge stuff. So basically this is kind of like a combination and putting all the chords, arpeggios, and scales together, and we're all working within a key. So all this stuff is in a key, and this connects everything together within a key. So that's really important. I want to put that before the video. So it's not just like a bunch of random arpeggios and and whatnot. It's all cohesive to the major scale. So with that being said, start the video. What's up, everybody? I'm here with an exercise that's going to combine chords, arpeggios, the pentatonic scale, and the major scale all in one cohesive exercise. The point of this exercise is to show how all 4 of those things work together, because normally they're taught separately, which is great, and it's great to learn them separately, just so you can kind of focus on one kind of aspect of the guitar. But after you kind of get your feet wet with all of those things, it's great to start combining them in different ways, and this exercise combines all of them so into one thing. So who's this exercise for? Maybe someone who's only got like maybe 15-20 minutes a day to practice, or maybe you just want to spend 20 minutes like really practicing something, or you got some free time while you're watching the football game on the couch and you just want to noodle. But this is a cool little thing to practice because it really shows how all of those things are connected within a key to each other, and it's just a great way to increase your fretboard knowledge as well and your awareness of where you're at. So it's definitely helped me out a lot. Still got a long way to go. I still practice it every day, and for the most part, because I kind of have a lot of free time on my hands to practice, but this really just condenses a lot of information into a really straightforward exercise. So if you're short on time, a great way to cram all of that in to where you're at least kind of working through it and working your muscle memory is to do this exercise. So basically I'm going to show you probably 2 positions of the exercise, because mapping it out the first couple times might take a while. I actually had to spend a lot more time on it when I first started doing it, just get used to it. But after you get used to it and you can start breezing your way through it is when it gets really good, like most exercises really. But yeah, so you might have to spend a little while trying to map it out. But that's the good part about this exercise, is I firmly believe in doing guitar exercises, or any other musical instrument for that matter. They're thinking exercises. One that you have to really think your way through. You can't just read tab and just work your way through it. You have to like think about what's going on. So I'm really big on thinking exercises, and that's what this is. We're going to be thinking about all these exercises. The only tabs you should need would probably just be the 5 positions of the pentatonic scale, and then all 7 positions of the major scale, which are kind of like the mode positions, what have you, however you want to look at it. But if you have those down already, that's great. If you don't have those down, highly suggest before starting this, you need to have all 5 pentatonic scale positions down. You need to have all the mode or the major scale positions down, which also are kind of the mode positions. So that's 2 birds, 1 stone on that. And you kind of need to be familiar with the way intervals line up on the fretboard. I made a video about triad inversions and how to learn triad inversions effectively. And Triad inversions are great because they're essentially just chords, and triad inversions kind of pivot their way into learning arpeggios very well, because to learn arpeggios in different positions, you kind of need to know how the notes are inverted on each other to actually play them. So, before I get into the big exercise, I'm actually going to do a light version of it. This is probably geared towards people that just know the pentatonic scale at the moment, and this will also help you get your feet wet with arpeggios. So I'm going to show you the light version first, and then I'll go into a couple positions of the bigger exercise. So let's work on the light version first. Okay, the light version of this exercise is going to use all pentatonics. So you need to know all 5 positions of the pentatonic scale. Obviously that takes a little time to learn, but highly recommend learning all 5 positions, really, because the pentatonic scale is like the skeleton for a lot of other things, which I could probably do another video on. But if you can move around the fretboard within the pentatonic scale, you're really opening a lot of doors for yourself in the future for future knowledge. Highly recommend it. And this is a great way to kind of start seeing that. So we're going to work with the first 2 positions of the pentatonic scale for the sake of brevity in this video, because it would take forever to explain all this in each position, and that goes along with my point about thinking exercises. I'm not going to show you everything, you gotta do it on your own, but I highly recommend maybe having some of this stuff printed out so you can fact check yourself, make sure you're playing the right notes, and if your ear is good enough, you'll know when you're not playing the correct notes, especially when it comes to arpeggios, and getting lost within an arpeggio. So we're working in G major pentatonic. You should know the difference between the minor and major pentatonic and which one starts where. So we're going to use the first position, G major pentatonic. Alright, so the exercise is play the pentatonic scale up and down however many times you want and whatever kind of way you want. This part's up to you. You can just play it straight. I recommend playing with a metronome. I'm not going to do that right now, but play with a metronome. Do whatever subdivision timing you want to do. Do a different pattern, whatever. That's open. That's up to your interpretation of this exercise. But for the most part, maybe just play it straight to where you get comfortable with each position of the scale. So after we play the G major pentatonic, we're then going to find the G major arpeggio within that scale and within that position. So we have the G major pentatonic. Now we gotta find the G major arpeggio. So we have our root, 3rd, 5th, root, 3rd, 5th, root, 5th. And then we can go back. Okay? Now you're gonna do that for all 5 positions. Find the G major arpeggio within each of the 5 positions of the G major pentatonic. So the second position, now we gotta find the G major arpeggio within that. So how do we do that? Well, here's the 3rd of the G major, here's the 5th of the G major, G, 3rd, 5th, G, 3rd, 5th. And that's pretty much the point, is you're using the scale, the pentatonic scale, but you're recognizing where your root is, where your major 3rd of your root is, and where your perfect 5th of your root is. Kind of helps you stay oriented in the scale. So it's not just some scale position that you're running up and down. Now you have 3 footholds within the scale position. You know where your root, your third, and your fifth is, and you know it on all 5 positions. That's the point of this exercise. This is like your first footholds of really knowing where these notes are within the scale and not just blindly playing the pentatonic scale. So highly recommend starting with this one and then doing all 5 positions and then working on the next one, which we're about to start talking about. All right, so this is the big one, the big exercise. So this is going to combine your knowledge of the major scale, the pentatonic scale, your arpeggios, and chords. So it doesn't matter if you use the traditional major scale shapes or you do the 3 notes per string, the concept is still the same. So it works both ways, and if you're trying to learn 3 notes per string versus like the traditional classical scale patterns or whichever, I recommend just doing both, whatever, you know. And I'm still working on 3 notes per string because I didn't start with that. But anyways, the concept is the same. So we're going to lay out the G major scale on the low E, and that's going to be the foundation for what we're about to do. So you should know how to build a major scale. G. So that's how our G major scale goes, and off of each note of the major scale we have a chord, we have an arpeggio, we have the major scale underneath it, and it starts in each position, and kind of also how the modes work in a sense. So what we're going to do off of each position of the major scale, we're going to play the pentatonic if a pentatonic note exists on that note. So the major pentatonic scale only has a note on the root, the second, the third, the fifth, and the sixth. Alright, so that was a lot of information. Let's kind of go over an example. So we're going to start in position 1 of the G major, which would be right here, G. And so what we're going to do first is play the G major pentatonic, play it back up, and then after we play the G major pentatonic scale, we're then going to play the G major scale. Play it back up, whatever. And then after we play the G major scale, the first octave of the G major scale, or the major scale, so those 8 notes, we're going to play a chord and then an arpeggio. So backtrack a second. We started on G, played G major pentatonic, then we played the G major scale. Now for each of the 8 notes in that position in the first octave, we're going to play a chord for each of those notes, and then we're going to play the arpeggio for them. And whatever order you want to do this in is fine. You can play the chord and then the arpeggio if it helps you visualize that, or you can just play the chords through them and then play the arpeggio. Alright, so we're going to start on the chords now. Obviously, G is our home tonic chord, and that's going to be G major. Shocker. And then we go up to our A note, which is a minor chord, right? Second note of the major scale builds a minor chord. So here I'm going to stop for a second and note that when I'm trying to play these chords and arpeggios, I'm trying to play them within the position and not going out of position. I'm trying to see them within the position that we're working in. So with that being said, once you get to here, you can play the normal minor bar chord, or you can kind of play the tricky triad inversion. It's not exactly ergonomic and easy to do, but it's good to know how to play a chord forward and backwards. So, all right, moving on. Just try to keep what you're doing within the scale position so you can see how it fits in that position. That's kind of the point. You don't want to just keep playing the same version of the chord over and over again, because you're not going to really see how it fits in the scale. All right, so we go from our 2 to our 3, which is a minor chord on the A string. Then we go to our 4, which is a major chord, right? Our 1, 4, 5 is major. I can't really play that note because my fingers suck, but all right, and then we go up to our 5th. Now instead of playing the same chord shape, let's play the caged chord shape, or the C major one. All right, there's our 5th, and then our minor chord. Play this tricky one. You can play it like this, or you can play it in first inversion, which gives you this kind of shape, or you can play the tricky version, which I don't really like that one. I have a hard time snapping my fingers into it. All right, that's our minor 6, and then we have our 7th diminished. I guess you could play like this, or do the full diminished one. And then we're going to play our major chord like this, within the scale position. Back to our tonic, right here. Rooted off the D string. Alright, kept it all in the position. Now, we're going to work on the arpeggios. Alright, now we're going to pretty much do that same process, but for the arpeggios, which, shocker, you're just going to be kind of arpeggiating the chord shapes. However, unlike the chord shapes, we're always going to include all 6 strings, no matter what. Doesn't matter if you started on the D string, we're going to include the notes that are featured on the E and A string. You got to bring those in. This shows you how they're all connected. If you just start playing the arpeggio from the D string during this exercise, you're not going to know how to play it upwards and what notes are up above it. You're just kind of cutting your knowledge in half when you do that. So it's important to always start it on the lowest note possible. So, and realizing which one's your root, and then starting on the lowest note possible. So let's go over that. We have our G note. We're going to start over and go to G. And then we're going to play the G major arpeggio, because it's our home tonic chord and it's major, right? Alright, then we're going to move up and we're going to play our minor arpeggio. Now instead of playing the arpeggio for that shape, we're going to play it backwards into the position we're working in. Alright, now we're going to go to the 3rd, which is right here. Our 3rd in the scale is a minor chord. So what are we going to do? We're going to include the E string, because we're going to include all the strings on the arpeggios. So the note that we're looking for is our 5th, which is right above it. The 5th is always right above your root note. So we're going to play the arpeggio like that. Alright, moving on from there, we got our 4 chord, and we're going to play the arpeggio starting on the E string. And right there's our root. And then return back to the root. Alright, and then we have our 5th. And then if you want to start this arpeggio, we have the fifth of our fifth right there. We also have our major third right there. We'll turn back to our fifth. And then we have our sixth. And this is on the D string. This is our first one on the D string. Now we gotta include the E and A string into this arpeggio. Now since this is a minor chord, we have our fifth right there, and then our minor third is right there, our G note. So we're gonna play the arpeggio like that. Alright, then we're gonna move up to the diminished arpeggio, which for me is the most difficult and annoying one, and I usually always mess it up because you rarely play diminished chords and diminished arpeggios. So I wouldn't blame you if you skipped it, but you know, it's good to practice it. So we have our seventh one over here, and then I have our diminished fifth. Instead of being right above it, it's back there, and then our minor third over here. Alright, and then back to our root note, which is our octave. Now instead of just playing the same one we did earlier, let's grab the note from up here. Alright, so we just played the first scale position, pentatonic. We played the major scale, first position. We played every single chord within the key in the first position, and then we played an arpeggio for every single note in the first octave. That's a lot of work and fretboard knowledge all within one position. And once you do this for all 6 positions, you know, then you're really starting to increase your fretboard knowledge. And I do it in all the positions. So let's go over the second one real quick. So we have our second note, and we're going to play this. There is a pentatonic position off of the second note in the scale. Alright, then we would play the second position of the major scale, or the Dorian scale. Alright, and then we would play all of the chords and all of the arpeggios in that position. But that's when it starts to get tricky, because then we're starting in our second, and then it helps you keep track of that's your second, your third, your fourth, your fifth, sixth. And the further you go up, the little more trickier it gets to keep track of the note that you're on and the function that it has. So this is why this is important. Alright, to sum up this exercise, and go over the information again. We're going to build our G major scale on the low E string, and you can put this into different keys. So we laid out our G major scale on the E string, and on each note we're going to play the corresponding pentatonic if it has one, which I went over which notes have a pentatonic scale built off of those notes, off the position. Then we're going to play all 7 of the major scale positions, and then within the first octave on the E, A, and D string, we're going to play a chord off of each note in each octave, and then after that we're going to play an arpeggio on all of the strings. Even if you're on the A and D string, you're going to include the E, all 6 of the strings, play the arpeggio. So, and when you're doing all these, like I mentioned earlier, you want to make sure you're keeping it within the position, because therefore, when you keep it in the position, you're seeing it forward and backwards. As you move through the scale, you're going to start seeing the way the chords go backwards and forwards on the fretboard. So that's why it's important to try to keep the arpeggio within the scale, or within the position. So instead of just always playing each arpeggio going forward every time you're doing it, you're learning the forward way and the backwards way, because it's kind of a forward way and a backwards way no matter where you're at to play an arpeggio or a chord for that matter. So just keep it in the position. So this is something that you're gonna have to take some time to map out. It took me a while, but after a couple weeks or so, after doing it a couple weeks, I'm able to kind of like breeze through this within like 15 minutes maybe. So, you know, if it seems like a lot of information, which it is, like at a certain point it becomes novel and easy to go through because you know it very well. And that's the purpose of these exercises, is you take those times to plant those seeds and work your way through it. Eventually they grow and you don't have to tend to them as much, and it becomes like ingrained knowledge, so you don't have to think so hard about it. So this is what you need to be doing in your practice routines, is practice this stuff now, get used to it, do the hard work now, and it makes everything else easy, because then you can just sit down and practice and just go through it, and you know, you're familiar with it at that point. So that's just the first big hump everyone's got to get over, is the familiarity stage. You know, everyone wants everything tabbed out for them, and so they can just blindly play something. They don't want to think about what they're doing. So think your way through this exercise, map it out for yourself with the concept of pentatonic scale, major scale, chords, arpeggios off of each note in each position. So play all 7 positions, do the same thing in each position. If this was confusing, leave a comment. I'll try to reply to any comment that's, if you have any questions. But other than that, thank you for watching, and stick around for other videos. Thanks. Oh yeah, go watch my triad inversion video. It's really good. Bye.